Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by editor of the Wolfpacker.com, fellow co-host Matt Carter. It's been a while since we've had myself and Matt Carter on the pod to talk a little bit of Wolfpack basketball, so we've got a lot to catch up on. We're going to go a little bit more big picture here, as Matt was briefing me before we start this pod. So don't worry, folks. We're not going to get too much into the specifics of Saturday's Georgia Tech home game, but let's talk a little bit about this big stretch that NC State has coming up, and where the Wolfpack stands and the ACC race for potentially getting the double bye in Greensboro in March, where they stand in bracketology, seeding wise, what NC State has to do between now and March. So we'll get into all that good stuff. But before we do that, some quick reminders for the listeners and viewers at home. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to this podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you should check us out on our YouTube channel, the Wolfpacker YouTube channel, almost at 2,000 subscribers. If you have not done so already, smash that subscribe button. We'd really love to get to 2,000 before NC State's playing in March. That's going to be the conversation today. Between now and then, ACC tournament, NCAA tournament, where does NC State stand? Let's get to 2,000 before, NC State's in Greensboro in March. But anyways, go give us a thumbs up on this YouTube video. Drop a comment while you're at it. All that stuff helps us out tremendously. We appreciate the loyal listeners and viewers. Also, head over to the Wolfpacker.com. Take advantage of a special deal for $29.99. You can get premium subscription to the Wolfpacker.com as part of the On3 network through the end of August. So that's going to take you through the entire summer up until the beginning of college football season. So now through the end of August 2023, $29.99. That's about 7 months there. It's normally about $10 a month for premium service. So you're saving roughly $50, and that's not a sharp stick in the eye. As Matt Carter and I were talking about the cost of going to basketball games, he said parking costs $30. There you go. You save 2 trips to PNC Arena basically with this deal. So $29.99, same as it costs to park your car at PNC Arena. You can get premium subscription to the Wolfpacker.com until the beginning of college football season. Last and certainly not least, head over to rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com for all of your premium cannabis, CBD, Delta 8, and Delta 9 goodies. They've got all kinds of great stuff over there. They've got cannabis itself. They've got cartridges. They've got tinctures, for discreet use. You just drop a couple drops underneath your tongue, feel the effects, edibles, all kinds of good stuff, even lotions. It's a small business founded by a husband and wife. The husband's a disabled veteran that was turned on to these natural products to help him with some of his symptoms like anxiety and stress, trouble sleeping at night, chronic pain and inflammation. Once he was turned on to the natural stuff, he loved it so much, changed his life for the better so much that he wanted to start this company, rogueshop.com, to spread it with the great folks like you and me and Matt. So head over to rogueshop.com. Matt and I have both tried out some of their products. We love them. I think I can safely speak for Matt here that they've got great quality stuff, and they're great answering any questions that you have. So head over there. They've got a great chat feature. It's a small business. Like, we're talking 4 or 5 people running this company. It's not some big corporation. So you're actually going to be talking to a real life human being if you use their chat feature. rogueshop.com, ROGUE shop.com. And they're also on the message board. So if you're a member of the Wolfpacker.com, you can always ask the folks at rogueshop.com any questions that you have on the message boards. All right, Matt.
All right, I'm going to interrupt here too for fans listening. Help out the brother Justin Williams here. He's trying to go to the Carolina game on Sunday, February 19th in town.
Oh, shout out, Matt.
And I'm going to help him out because I don't have spare tickets, and he's willing to he really wants to go. So if anybody, a loyal NC State fan, can't make it,
and I will happily pay. By the way, I'm not trying to score. I mean, look, if I've got a fan out there that wants to give me some free tickets, by all means. But happy to pay the price. I just hate StubHub. I hate Ticketmaster. I hate all those third-party websites, and I can no longer buy tickets on GoPack.com because this one's becoming a big one. So, if anybody's out there listening and has a couple extra tickets for the NC State-Carolina game, send me a DM on Twitter at Justin H. Will, or reach out to Matt. He can get you my information, and would really appreciate that. But anyways, Matt, let's talk about some actual basketball. The people don't want to hear me begging for tickets. The people want to talk about Wolfpack basketball, and this season just keeps on giving. I think I saw a stat from you the other day, Matt. This is the best start in ACC play for NC State since
2005 and 6. 2005 and 6.
Oh, okay. I was looking at the stat of 7-1 in January.
That was the best January since like 88 or 89.
Yep.
Something. You hope your season ends up more like that one than the 2005-6 team, because that ended up being the swan song for Herb Sendek in Raleigh. I think after 12 games, they were 9-3 in the ACC. I think they got to 10-3, and then it went all downhill from there. So right around the time they played UNC in Raleigh. So you really hope history doesn't repeat itself here coming up soon.
Well, speaking of history, Matt, 1980, it was the best January for NC State basketball since 1989.
Yeah.
What else significant happened in 1989, Matt?
Were you born?
I was not born.
Okay.
No. I was a 90s baby. Thank you. Am I looking that old these days? No. Matt, I will tell you, it's the last time NC State won the ACC in the regular season.
All right, good segue.
So now let's take a look at the standings here. NC State, number 4 in the ACC right now, just one game behind number 1 Clemson at 10-3. Then you got the Pitt Panthers and Virginia tied for second at 9-3. NC State going up to Charlottesville has a chance to put itself in second place in the league with a win in Charlottesville. Now, probably the toughest game they've got remaining on the schedule, but tied with NC State right now, Miami at 9-4. Then you got Duke and Carolina 8-4, 7-5. So, first things first, you just absolutely love to see NC State above the two blue teams in the ACC standings. But here we are in February, Matt, and NC State 1 game back of the lead in the ACC standings race. Does NC State have a shot to maybe sneak up on Clemson and maybe win the regular season? Is there a chance? You tell me there's a chance?
There's a chance, but I will tell you this. I think Clemson's going to come back to the pack, so to speak. I didn't mean to put a pun on that, but it worked out well.
Well, they are going to have to come to Raleigh.
And they are going to have to come to Raleigh. And they were 10-1, but here's how they got to 10-1. One, they had a pretty nice schedule set up. A lot of the tougher teams they played did come to Clemson. So they did beat a Duke, and they did beat NC State, but those teams came to Clemson. And they did have a nice win at Pittsburgh, to their credit. But they also, of those 10 wins, 3 were by 1 point, which I think I saw on the ACC network is like one off the record for most ACC wins by 1 point.
Beat Virginia Tech by a point.
On a budget shot at home with Virginia
Beat
Tech.
Duke by a point, right?
That may have been the case. And I know
at home.
They beat Florida State by 1 when they were down 2 and got a 3-point play with like 2 seconds left to beat Florida State on the road. So, and they had another victory by 3 points as well. I don't remember who it was. So that's 4 of their 10 victories were by 3 points or less. Give me 1 second here. And so I kind of feel like that's kind of, that's like the football team, like UNC football, right? When they were 9-1, but they won 6 games by touchdown or less. They were like 6-0. That's an anomaly that comes back to earth at some point. So I could see Clemson coming back. Here's my concern as you're talking about, can NC State win the regular season? Pittsburgh. What again? 9-3.
I believe they are a half game above NC State, 9-3. So they've played one fewer game than NC State at the moment.
Yeah, I got that schedule right here. Let's look at their remaining schedule.
Because I've seen a couple Pitt games this year, and they've had a pretty tough early slate in the ACC.
Yeah, their next game is Louisville at home.
That's a win.
They go to Florida State.
That should be a win, but you never know.
Yep. Host Boston College.
That's a win.
They go to Virginia Tech, which is
that's sneaky. That's sneaky.
Host Georgia Tech.
That's a win.
Host Syracuse.
That's probably a win, but you never know. Syracuse, late in February, they're eventually probably always going to try to find a way to make March and somehow get in the Sweet 16.
At Notre Dame.
Maybe Mike Bray's last home game.
Right,
win one more for Bray.
They don't seem to be responding well to the Mike Bray retirement tour so far. It's tough, Ben. And then at Miami, which is very tough. But point being, 6 of their last 8 games are against teams that have losing records in the ACC.
That Pitt-Miami game might be for the league.
Yeah, and that's the other one, too. Let's look at Miami now. They played, like NC State, they played 13 games. 5 of their last 7 games are at home. Yeah, they have played a very road lopsided schedule. So they get Duke, Louisville, Wake Forest, Florida State, and Pittsburgh at home. And then they play at North Carolina, at Virginia Tech. So you just kind of look at the scheduling, right? And I could see a scenario where NC State ends up tied. I could see a scenario where we have like 3 or 4 teams tied for the ACC. It can be very hard for NC State to win tiebreakers. Like I think the chances of NC State being a 1 seed, it's a bit of an uphill climb, being that, particularly in the case of Pittsburgh, they won their only head-to-head. You look at Miami. Miami and NC State split, but Miami just beat Clemson the only time they play head-to-head. So that next tiebreaker is how you do against the top teams. Where Miami beat Clemson, State already has a loss to Clemson, so it doesn't matter if they beat Clemson or not. Miami won that tiebreaker. And Miami also beat Virginia. So if NC State beats Virginia, Miami is also 1-0 against Virginia. So NC State really has to beat Virginia just to have a prayer and a tiebreaker with Miami, and they lose the head-to-head tiebreaker with Pitt. It's tough to see scenarios in which they could pull out a tiebreaker. And the other thing about NC State, if you have to be honest, the one thing that does concern me is they've won 8 of 9 games, but 5 of their victories have been against teams that are below 500 in the ACC. And we kind of talked about the beginning of February, end of June, beginning of February, with that stretch where NC State could make a move. And that's what they've been able to do, is avoid a really, to their credit, we'll talk about that with the NCAA tournament. They've avoided a bad loss, sometimes flirted with it. But
like on Saturday.
Yeah, Notre Dame was another one when they came.
Yep.
To Raleigh.
I'll give them a little bit of excuse there, hangover game after an emotional road loss against a rival, North Carolina. Terquavion Smith gets banged up in that game. He comes out, with his head on fire in the first half and just couldn't make anything. Had a lot of good looks at the rim, just wasn't finishing, and then found his rhythm at the end of that game. But during the stretch, Matt, you also got to give credit where credit's due. NC State has some great wins in this last 9-game stretch, starting with the road or the home victory against Duke. Big home win for Duke on Saturday against Carolina. Duke's a tournament lock, I would say. Duke, not a vintage Duke team by any means. I don't think they're a title contender. I don't think they're really a Final Four contender, but
Sweet 16 would be a good year for this Duke team.
But it's still a good win. Yeah. And you know what else was a good win? Going up to Blacksburg, beating Virginia Tech after they had entered that game coming off 3 losses, needing a victory for their own NCAA tournament hopes, handling business on the road against Virginia Tech. Of course, Miami, I mean, the home win against Miami is probably, assuming NC State doesn't beat Virginia and Charlottesville, is probably going to date to be NC State's best win this season.
I think those two. You're looking at two surefire NCAA teams in Miami and Duke, who ironically I think play each other Monday night.
But you know what game might have impressed me the most of this stretch, Matt? And tell me if you disagree here. But I think that road victory in Winston-Salem, that showed me that this team, they get to the tournament. They're not gonna have a matchup that they're gonna be scared of. That there's not a matchup out there that I think you say NC State has no chance, because you've got playmakers on this team. You've got that seniority experience with Jarkel Joyner. You've got the veteran guard. You've got a guy in Terquavion Smith that could go off for 30 any given night. Now, granted, he could also, shoot your way out of a game too. But I mean, if you're gonna get matched up with a 1 seed, if NC State's looking at an 8 or 9 seed in the NCAA tournament, and they get Purdue or they get Kansas or they one of the big dogs in the second round, they don't want to see Terquavion Smith on the other sideline. And DJ Burns, an option in the half court when all else fails and your guards aren't making shots. You can throw it down to the big man, let him go to work. And he's just got that vintage YMCA, over the shoulder game that has made him a fan favorite in Raleigh. So
Carlos Boozer called him a little Al Jefferson. I don't know.
Great comparison. Great comparison.
And he mentioned, anyways, Terquavion Smith can shoot you out of a game, but I think that was the case last year. I think what makes this team different is they don't need Terquavion Smith exclusively. He's the number one option to score. That's always going to be the case. But as you saw against Georgia Tech, he and Jarkel Joyner, normally you can rely on Joyner. It's going to be rare where both of them are just not on at all. But you also have Casey Morcell, who's hit some really clutch three-pointers. Like you mentioned against Wake Forest, he had a huge one to put NC State up 4 with about 3 minutes to go in that game.
Hit a huge one against Georgia Tech.
Put him up by 4 with 2 minutes to go. You got Burns, who can get you 20 in the paint. You just got more options this year. I agree with you. The Wake Forest with the most. To me, I don't think it's the best win on a resume, right?
No.
The most impressive in the fact of how they did it.
Wake Forest needed that game. Yeah. They needed it.
And they're up 10 in the second half. That's not a venue. That's not a location. That's not a type of team at which NC State rallies from 10-point down on the road very much to win. And what were they from the free throw line that game? My goodness, it was just like terrible.
Couldn't make a shot.
Yeah. And they won. And Terquavion Smith was on the bench with 4 fouls, and they won the game. The 2 games I'm watching are those 2 road games you mentioned, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest. I'm curious to see, because I think Virginia Tech is poised to go on a run. They lost a really big important player to them, Hunter Couture. He's back. They've been playing so much better.
Beat Virginia on Saturday.
Virginia. And here's an interesting stat. Virginia Tech has played 10 games in a row against teams that are above 500 in the ACC. So what does that mean? The back part of their schedule, right, gets much more friendly. Boston College, Notre Dame, and Georgia Tech are their next 3 games. And they also have Louisville still left on the schedule. So they're 4-8 in the ACC, but blink, and by the time you're in town and you're collecting your ticket from your buddy listener on the Wolfpacker podcast, and you're sure to get his information or her information to give a shout out to on the next podcast, you're going to blink and Virginia Tech is going to be 7-8 in the ACC. And because they did some nice things in non-conference play, they're like the opposite of Clemson. Like Clemson has a really gaudy ACC record, but they don't have a great NCAA tournament resume. It's okay, but it's not great.
Yeah. They're the Wake Forest of last year.
Exactly. Virginia Tech, poor ACC record, but they're not that far from being right back in the NCAA tournament if they just get a few wins here. because of some of the stuff they did in non-conference play. And they got the win over UNC at home. They got the win over Duke at home. Now they got the win over Virginia at home. So those are the two I'm watching. I think Wake Forest had the chance to get onto the bubble. And those are the type of things you're pulling for if you're NC State, because the more quality those wins have, because you just don't have a quality non-conference win to hang your hat on. Maybe Furman wins the Southern Conference, but you're just not going to have a quality non-conference victory to hang your hat on, which is why when we talk NCAA tournament, everybody putting them in that 8-9 line right now.
Butler and Dayton net check. I'll admit, Matt, I have not checked the net on the Butler Bulldogs or the Dayton Flyers. How are they doing?
Yeah, so Butler is free falling. Unfortunately for Manny Bates, he chose to leave NC State and go to Butler, and it hasn't worked out probably like he had hoped. But God, they went through a stretch where they were getting beat by 20 points every night in the Big East. So they made progress. They only lost by 8 to Marquette, I think, over the weekend, which for them was kind of progress. But I believe they're in last place in the Big East. To your question in the net, they fall in there like 112 range.
Okay, so it's not going to do anything for you. How about Dayton?
Well, so Dayton was floating. So at the neutral court, top 50 is quad 1. At one point, Dayton was in that 55 range. Now they're 85.
Okay.
They're still quad 2, but sliding, and it's still top 4 in the A10. Vanderbilt did get in the top 100 for a week or two, and then they lost to Alabama by 50, literally 50-plus points.
It happens. It happens in football, happens in basketball. You just sometimes you can't avoid the Crimson Tide, man.
So they fell out. But I do think Vanderbilt's a team to watch to get back. They're like 106 right now. So they could just bump up.
They'll have opportunities for good wins in the SEC too.
I think they're playing at Tennessee this week, so maybe they can. And you don't have to win it. That's the thing about the net. If they go to Vanderbilt and lose on a budget shot, they're going to Tennessee, I should say, and lose on a budget shot, they're going to move up. And you got Furman. Now, Furman's a team that's made a run, and they're within shouting distance of moving from quad 3 to quad 2. So if you're NC State, you're pulling for Vanderbilt and Furman to get back to quad 2, because I don't see Butler doing that. But regardless of all that, unless they win conference tournament, none of those teams are making the NCAA tournament, which is, again, you can't hang your hat on any of those wins.
Well, the bottom line is this, as if you're NC State fans, you don't have to be splitting your hairs too much about, don't worry so much about throwing on ESPN Plus to watch, Dayton battle it out to see if that'll turn into a quad 2 game, because when it comes down to it, the resume is what the resume is. NC State is in the driver's seat right now. It controls its own destiny, assuming it does not crap the bed here in the final stretch of the regular season. NC State is an NCAA tournament team. It's one of the better quality wins you can have in the ACC right now, and they have more opportunities coming up. I think, Matt, we were talking about this a little bit at the beginning or before we started recording. I really think NC State's just one more quality win away from, go ahead and put them in Sharpie. That could happen on Tuesday at Virginia. That would be a signature win. I think at that point, you're thinking, all right, the rest of the way is for seeding. This is not a bubble team anymore. This is an NCAA tournament team. But even if NC State goes up to Charlottesville and loses, you got to take care of business against Boston College and Syracuse. But that last 4-game stretch of Carolina, Wake Forest, Clemson, Duke, Wake Forest at home isn't going to be a resume builder, but you could certainly hang your hat on splitting those last 4 games 2-2, because at least you beat Carolina at home, you beat Duke on the road, you beat Clemson at home. Those are all going to be quality wins.
I think those are. If you can get your wins over Duke and Clemson at home, at the end of the day, you can say that even if you lose to Virginia, you beat, other than Virginia and Pitt, you beat every NCAA team possibility in the ACC because you already beat Wake and Virginia Tech. If they get back to the bubble, and you got the wins over Miami and Duke, so that would play a huge role. I tend to think if you get 4-3 in these last 7 games, you're probably going to be okay. To your point, I think if you win at Virginia, that gives you the marquee win. Because, right now, Duke, I'm not sure is the top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. So you really don't have a win over a team that's like a top 4 seed. Virginia.
Miami.
I think Miami right now kind of 5-6 range.
Miami's going to be a top 4. They're going to be a top 4 team in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, they had the bad loss at Georgia Tech. And, they went through a stretch where it was win-loss. They went through 8 games, but they went 4-4. It was like win-loss, win-loss, win-loss.
Look, you said it before the pod, man. Georgia Tech, yeah, they don't have much talent, but Josh Pastner can coach. I mean,
yeah.
That's a sneaky team. You don't – look, Georgia Tech, terrible ACC record. You're so glad NC State did not stub its toe on Saturday, as we've seen countless times against the Yellow Jackets.
That part of the BC game, by the way, sneaky big. BC is 4-3 at home this year. Beat Clemson at home.
Gave Duke a scare.
Lost to Duke by 1 point because Filipowski made 2 free throws with like 10 seconds to go.
Yep.
And that's the last opportunity NC State's going to have a quote-unquote bad loss. And so it's something that counts. If you want to know why Clemson's sweating, it's because they got 3 terrible losses. So, that could be when was the last time we talked about an NC State team and said where they had no bad losses? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I'm old enough, man. we gotta fire up the history of the ACC doc that played on the ACC network last year. Which, by the way, if you haven't watched, great watch. Loved that documentary. Early episodes, very NC State heavy.
I remember in 2019. Remember when the non-conference slate was really holding them down that year?
Yeah.
And they were struggling because that was the year Virginia, UNC, and Duke were like unbelievably good, all 3 of them.
Like all were like rotating in the top 5.
Yeah. And so NC State went like 0-6 or something like that against those teams, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, other than beating Auburn, they didn't really have a quality win. But they were beating all the teams they were supposed to be. They had a good quad 2 record. And the one thing they didn't have any bad losses until Georgia Tech. And what was the guy's name at Georgia Tech that beat NC State 3 times in a row with the
Banks?
Yes. And he beats NC State with the buzzer shot. And I think that was like maybe the last home game of the year.
I remember going to that game as a student.
Yeah. I remember now all of a sudden they had a bad loss.
Yep.
On the resume. And it really –
it was a buzzer beater dunk.
That's right.
Yep.
And so that's what you kind of that's why BC kind of thinking, but it's a quad 3, so at least it wouldn't be like a quad 4 loss or something like that. But you don't want to lose that game.
Here's what's refreshing about this team, though, and tell me if you disagree here, Matt. But I'm not as worried about these trap games with this squad as I have been with NC State teams in the past, because, we went over that 9-game stretch just a minute ago. And what game stuck out to us the most? Wake Forest on the road, Virginia Tech on the road. How many times have we seen NC State, hand Duke an L at PNC Arena only to go stub its toe a couple weeks later, and then it just completely makes the win irrelevant? There's been countless NC State teams that have beaten the top 10 Duke team at home only to not make the NCAA tournament. That didn't tell me anything. NC State beating Duke by 20-plus points at PNC Arena, kind of something we've come to expect. What we haven't come to expect is coming from behind down 10 in the second half in Winston-Salem. That was like, okay, this is not the same NC State team we're necessarily used to.
Yeah. To your point, yeah, I just have 2 decades plus experience of heartache covering NC State, and to breathe too easy until it actually comes. But interesting. I actually think they matched up pretty well against Virginia on Tuesday. Syracuse might be a little tough with the zone. And you know what's also impressive about this NC State team? They're missing 2 starters. They've been missing 2 starters since December, and they're still doing this. So
they're the right starters to miss, but yeah. We're I think Mahorcic is probably the one that you need to get back sooner rather than later, especially for the UNC game looming. There was, frankly, I was surprised DJ Burns lasted as long as he did in the Dean Dome, against that front line of Carolinas, especially with the foul discrepancy, which I don't want to get into that rabbit hole, but they
were too busy calling fouls out on the perimeter for it ever to get inside.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying that smart alecky. That's the honest to goodness truth. RJ Davis got fouled dribbling the ball near half court so many times.
Oh, speaking of which, should we give a moment of silence to the UNC fans and UNC basketball program for just, they just never get anything, they just losing at Cameron to Duke, it's tough to win when you don't get plus 20 from the foul line.
They got I actually, for another reason, I was doing something Georgia Tech related and ran over the stat box score from that game, and I'm still, that game with rebounding was huge, but free throws were the difference in that game. What bothered me was the way Hubert Davis mentioned, like they were entitled.
Yeah.
To have a certain number of free throws.
Well, sounds on brand to me.
Yeah, it was like just because you lead the ACC in free throws taken by 150, I would question what that means, to be honest with you. I don't think the question UMC wants to be asked. I think the question is how come one team had that big of a disparity and then only get 3 free throws at Duke. And the way he said it, it was almost like, hey, with UNC, we get the most fouls. We go to the line the most. We're supposed to go to the free throw line. We're entitled to shoot free throws. So negative on the moment of silence. No, they by the way, that 150 plus free throws is skewed by NC State game.
Well, they were plus 30 on the foul line in that game, right?
Something in that ballpark. And then the next game against Syracuse, they were like plus 20. So a third of that came in 2 games. So whatever.
What a brand of basketball to hang your hat on. I mean, a few years ago, you have Tony Bennett winning games in the 50s, rock fights. Congratulations, Virginia. You get a national championship by playing the most boring brand of basketball ever. And then, great program. Look, Carolina's a great program, but there's nothing fun about watching, Mondo Baycott go the foul line 15 times and you just win games by.
By the way, if you're looking at like double buys, you really let probably 7 teams in the mix for a double buy.
Yep.
In the ACC tournament.
Yep.
Nobody had that group had the hardest schedule than UNC.
Oh, rest of the way?
Yeah. Look, the next 4 games are at Wake Forest, Clemson, Miami, at NC State. They still have to play Virginia and Duke as well. So, if you try to figure out who has the schedule advantage and who has the tiebreaker advantage to kind of get that double bye, NC State's kind of in the middle of that group, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of tiebreakers and scheduling, of the 7, I would put North Carolina at 7 in that group for a potential double bye.
Maybe this would be a good way to wrap up the podcast here, Matt. What do you think? What do you think the goals should be for NC State the rest of the way as it relates to the ACC standings, where you want to be for the ACC tournament, and even bigger picture NCAA tournament? What do you think is a realistic goal for this team to shoot for in terms of a seeding range for the big dance?
Great question. This might not be a popular answer. I do think there's a bit of a ceiling to what NC State can do as an NCAA tournament seed, just because the non-conference didn't play out like maybe hoped, and so some of those wins don't carry weight, and because the ACC, with I think the ACC is not a bad conference, but it has two problems. Other than Virginia, they don't have anybody that can stand out nationally. And the bottom is as bad as the bottom's ever been. Like Louisville and Georgia Tech are epically bad this year. And Notre Dame is hugely disappointing this year. And Florida State just dug themselves into a tremendously bad hole. A lot of that was not their fault, that they're never going to climb out of. And BC is what BC kind of was supposed to be. So in terms of the ACC, I'm looking double bye. Can NC State be one of those 4 seeds to get a double bye, for which we talked about? I think NC State could make a run if the things go right. There's nobody in the ACC NC State can't beat.
Yep.
In Greensboro, where it's going to be a favorable crowd if they are making a run.
Well, however, they're going to need 3 games as opposed to 4.
Yeah, because you don't really feel good about DJ Burns playing 4. Really, 3 games in a row. Can that condition and hold up?
I gotta give the big man credit. The conditioning has gotten better.
Yeah. So,
but
you're hoping that Dusan Mahorcic is back then. People forget Mahorcic was averaging like 8 and 7 before he went down. So
and is a much better defender.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, so, I love DJ Burns much. I got a Beast Boy T-shirt on the way. Breaking T. After that Wake Forest game, I was so excited, Matt. I ordered it right away. I want some money to go to DJ Burns. But yes, he needs some help. He needs a sub.
So I think double bye is kind of the realistic goal. And then in terms of seeding, I mean, look, if you were to beat Virginia and Duke, and you get to 15-5 in the ACC or something crazy, crazy like that, I think you're looking 5 seed, kind of in that range.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to win the ACC tournament on top of that, then you can start talking, okay, then maybe you're getting up to the 3 line, but that's like,
Well, all right. Well, this is still the Wolfpacker podcast, man. We're still talking about NC State. Like,
yeah, I mean,
we gotta. Yeah, first things first. Like, let's see him beat Boston College and Chestnut Hill.
Yeah. And Virginia, would you rather play Virginia after they just lost to their rival on the road, or would you hope they have won that game and had an 8-game winning streak? And
I was disappointed. I was disappointed to see Virginia Tech win that game. Might help NC State in the long run, resume wise, but we have not seen the Cavaliers under Tony Bennett lose 2 games in a row very, very much. So
that'll be an interesting game.
But as long as Kevin Keats has been in Raleigh, NC State has competed against Virginia. Of the big dogs, there's been some good games against Virginia, even when NC State has been just outclassed talent-wise.
It's interesting, too. I think some of that is matchups. Like Georgia Tech is a tough matchup stylistically with NC State because they like to go to zone defenses. They like to run backdoor cuts, Princeton elements in the offense that really counters NC State's defense, which is a very aggressive denial of the passing lane, physical man-to-man pressing defense. I kind of wondered if Virginia stylistically, is not a bad matchup for NC State. The year they won the national championship, maybe remember that was an overtime game in Raleigh. And if NC State wins that game in overtime, they would have made the NCAA tournament that year. But they didn't pull it out. And then they won in Charlottesville, I want to say twice.
I think a couple years ago was the last time they won in Charlottesville. Remember, Matt, that was the team that
won like 5 road games in a row to end this.
Yeah, middle. It was Cam Hayes and Shaquille Moore's freshman year, and that team came out so slow in the ACC. I mean, they won in Raleigh against Carolina in December, and everyone was all excited. And then they lost at Clemson, and then they got hammered down in Tallahassee. Which, by the way, when I was watching that Florida State game last week, I was like, "This karma, man." Leonard Hamilton, life comes at you fast. It was only a couple of years ago you were beating NC State by 50 down in Tallahassee, and now Kevin Keatts has the opportunity to return the favor. And boy, they were loving it. They were loving it.
NC State has won twice in a row in Charlottesville, and they've won 3 or 4 against Virginia. One of their few wins last year, they beat Virginia in Raleigh. So
not as good of a Virginia team last year, but
no, that team didn't make the tournament. But yeah,
but NC State was the worst team in the ACC, so it's still an upset. But yeah, I don't know. I tend to agree with you, Matt. I kind of think sitting here, a 5 seed kind of seems like best case scenario. And if you get a 5, I mean, you can bracket math. Ideally, you match up with a 4. In the second round, or maybe that 4 seed gets upset and sets up well so that, get a little bracket luck, find yourself in the Sweet 16. Maybe you get matched up with a week 1 seed. And remember, the NC State's toughest game this year in terms of just of the opponents it's had, the highest seeded team they've played this year is going to be Kansas. Kansas looks like it's destined to be a 1 seed. NC State went toe-to-toe with Kansas for 40 minutes. I really don't think there's a lot of parity in college basketball. There's no tier of its own, Matt. I don't see any. I mean, I could see another 8 or 9 seed getting back to the Final Four just like last year.
At this time last year, nobody was predicting Kansas, North Carolina Final Four. So that's the blunt truth. Nobody was predicting either one of those teams to be playing for the national championship. So it's definitely wide open, and that is going to be the case for the considerable future of the NCAA tournament. So you forget, like what? You get $1 million if you get a perfect bracket. You will have earned every single penny of that $1 million if you somehow pull off a perfect bracket. So yeah, every year I think I have a perfect bracket going.
Mm-hmm. And then by mid-afternoon on Thursday, it's just toast.
Yeah.
Like, I've already lost the Final Four team. Really need South Dakota State to hang on here as my sexy, upset pick, but everybody else picked them as the 13 over the 4.
Yeah.
But man, it's just so much better to have NC State in the mix. It just makes college basketball so much more enjoyable, because it is my favorite pastime, being a 919 kid, Raleigh boy. It just doesn't seem right when NC State's not in the mix. So they're right where they want to be. I agree with you, Matt. I think the goal is to get that double bye in the ACC tournament. Got an uphill climb to maybe contend for the conference regular season championship. Don't see any scenario that, NC State wants to compete for that regular season title, going to have to go up to Charlottesville and get a 3rd straight win. Don't see any scenario where they could contend for the regular season championship without a win in Charlottesville. So, but hey, if they go up and beat Virginia on Tuesday, all bets are off.
Yep. We'll do this podcast again next week. If they come through this next, they're playing 3 games in a row on the road. By the way, I have to kind of close out my thoughts. That's unusual to be doing in February.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a pain in the butt road trip too, because you're playing the best team in the ACC. And you got to make that long flight on Saturday to Boston College for a morning. You're probably making it on Friday and spending the night Friday, and you got to get up and play in front of 1,000 fans maybe at BC.
You can get a great deal. Looking here on ESPN, you look at the schedule and they'll say the time, TV, tickets as low as $2 in Chestnut Hill next Saturday for anybody who wants to make the trip up to Boston.
You're going to have to generate your own energy for that one. And then you fly home after that game on Saturday, and then a couple of days later on Valentine's Day, you're flying right back up toward that part of the country to Syracuse in the Dome. So it's tricky. We'll find out a lot about where NC State is positioned in ACC and NCAA and everything after the 3-game road trip. But The other thing too, once you get home from Syracuse, you don't leave the state for the rest of the non-NCAA tournament life, because you get 3 games in a row at home. You get Duke and Durham, and you got ACC tournament in Greensboro. So,
it's pretty nice.
Yep. So what the schedule taketh, the schedule giveth as well, and so they're the team that finishes first. Every year one team finishes midweek, and that's NC State this year. So they do not play that last weekend before the ACC tournament. So
nice little bye, a little practice, a little scouting in that last weekend of the year. Rest up. DJ Burns, get those legs fresh. Might need them for 3 straight days in Greensboro. That's the hope, right?
Yeah.
And let's hope that the Wolfpack are tired. They're sick of eating ice cream by the time they come back to Raleigh and play UNC, because they're hoping for 3 trips to Cold Stone or Ben and Jerry's or wherever the best ice cream is. I'm sure they're pretty familiar with the ice cream in Charlottesville now. So they probably got a go-to spot.
There's a 9 o'clock game. So I don't know if there's an ice cream shop open by the time they get done.
Maybe bring some Howling Cow, put it on some ice or something just in case. Is that a curse?
Is that presumptive? I mean, that kind of...
Yeah.
Really, I mean, honestly, that's a big dilemma for whoever has to make that call. I don't know.
Maybe go McDonald's or you stop by a Cookout or something on the way back.
Do they have Cookout in Charlottesville?
That I don't know.
I don't even know if they're driving a bus or flying.
That I don't know. You're asking the wrong guy, but I hope they're getting ice cream, and I hope they're traveling in style on the way back, and it's a lively drive or fly back to Raleigh. But anyways, I think we've ran out of things to talk about, big picture wise. But let's hope we got some more things to talk about after this road trip. Maybe we'll be back, hopefully talking about another big NC State win in Charlottesville. Excited for this game on Tuesday. So that's going to do it for this podcast. We're going to wrap it up. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to us: Apple, Spotify, Google Play, you name it, we're there. Plus, we're always on YouTube. You can watch this podcast on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, please. We're so close to 2,000 subscribers rather. You'd really help us out a lot if you haven't already subscribed. Head over to youtube.com, subscribe to the Wolfpacker channel, and give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment while you're at it. Head over to thewolfpacker.com. Take advantage of the special deal they got going on right now. $29.99 is the price that will get you premium subscription to thewolfpacker.com through the end of August 2023. That takes you all the way up to the beginning of next college football season. It's normally about $10 a month. So, you're getting 8 months of premium subscription essentially for the price of 3. So you're saving $50. Like we said earlier, it costs the same to go park at PNC Arena. So, you happily pay the parking pass. Might as well pay to be an informed NC State Wolfpack fan. So head over to the Wolfpacker.com and take advantage of all the great work that Matt Carter does, and Ethan McDowell and Matt Coe over at the Wolfpacker.com. Plus, head over to our sponsor, but most importantly, RogueShop.com, ROGUE shop.com for your premium cannabis, CBD, Delta 8 and Delta 9 goodies. They've got some great products there. Matt and I have tried them. We love them. We've been your guinea pigs, so you guys feel free to go shop away, because these are some great products. They've got cannabis itself. They've got oils. They've got cartridges for discreet use. And, you don't want your house smelling. Cartridge is a good way to go. You've got oils like little tinctures. You can put that underneath your tongue for very discreet use. Edibles, all kinds of great stuff. And no matter who you are, I guarantee you either have some stress or anxiety in your life. Look, we're NC State people. I mean, it comes with the gig, right, Matt? Sleep deprivation. Hopefully you've been sleeping well with NC State, taking care of business recently. But as these games get tougher and tougher and the stakes become higher and higher, might take a little bit extra work to get to sleep after an exciting 9 o'clock game. So take one of these edibles, maybe put you to sleep a little bit quicker. And also chronic pain and inflammation. We all suffer from at least one of those things. And these products can really help out with those in a natural way. Founded by a husband and wife outfit. The husband is a disabled veteran that was turned on to these natural products, changed his life for the better, so much so that he created this company to share it with the great folks like you and me. So head over to rogueshop.com, proud sponsors of the Wolfpacker podcast. That's ROGUE shop.com. You can take advantage of their chat feature where you'll be talking to a real life human being on the other end on their website. And if you have any other questions, you can always go to our message board as well. They're on the message board, and you can fire away any questions you have about Rogue Shop's products. So rogueshop.com, ROGUE shop.com. Head over there now and buy some great products. All right, that's going to do it for Matt and I. Follow me on social media at Justin H. Will. Would love some DMs about UNC, NC State tickets. Would be great. Would really appreciate that. So please feel free to reach out. That's going to do it for this podcast. Matt, take us away.